TR, why is there a drone on the set? If someone... One second. If someone playing a prank, listen, we're going to do an evening show in no time. There shouldn't be a drone on this set. Did you get the permission to be on the set? Who's flying this thing? There has to be someone flying this, right? It can't be unmanned. I know you can do this, well, remotely, but there's someone in this office playing a prank. Who's doing it? Wait, I'm going to find out. I'm actually going to find out. Rishi, are you flying this thing?
Is this even legal in India?
That's what I'm asking, but I thought you're the one playing this prank.
Not me, but I have a request. I'm getting married next week. I need one of these at my wedding.
Well, congratulations, my friend, but you got to tell me who's doing this so we can go on with our show. Wait, there's someone out there as well.
Yeah.
Look at that one. Audrey, quick question. There's a drone flying on our set right now. Is it you who's behind this?
No, it's not me. And I think Ali should get this out of my face right now because I've got a fixed guest for you. You'll have nothing on your show.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, if it's not these two, I don't know who it is, but clearly someone is up to this. And I'm trying to figure out who it is. So you're the guy who's snuck into the Bloomberg Quint studios and playing with this drone. Hi, my name's Ayush.
Hi, Rahat.
Rahat, are you doing this alone or is there a gang of you guys doing this?
There is a team that we have at the office today.
Okay. And we're gonna... Hi, Ayush. Vignesh. Vignesh, nice to meet you.
Hey, got it.
So you are the guys who run Quidich, all right? And you guys are essentially drone enthusiasts? Is that the best way to describe you?
Yeah, we look at ourselves as a drone solution company.
Okay.
So we build solutions around drones for...
And you were, really, you mastered the skill of piloting that drone around the newsroom. I thought you were going to knock everything out rather. Clearly you managed, but tell me something. This drone that you were actually flying is one prototype. There are other models as well. Is this the smallest one? Because I understand now we do have, well, a draft drone policy in place. The government's been very futuristic about that. And then you got a nano, a micro, a small, a medium. So there's all sorts of drones. The one that was chasing me around the studio, what is that?
See, that was a micro drone,
Right.
because now if you look at the
The one right behind you.
yeah, the one right here, the
Right.
one that Raj just flew is essentially a micro drone.
Right.
So if you take a look at the policy, or rather if you speak to any drone enthusiast or any pilot or any startup, I think the big, hairy, audacious dream is to see a sky full of drones. So essentially, if you have to look at the policy in line with that, I think it's fairly futuristic, and this being a micro drone is one of the safest drones around.
Right.
And it has been now bucketed into four.
So when you say micro drone, Vignesh, you're saying this is less than 250 grams.
This is less than 2 kilos.
2 kilos.
So 0 to 250 is nano, and 250 to 2 is...
Those are really small ones.
Yeah, fairly
like
small.
the toys that
Yeah,
everyone's been playing
exactly.
with. And they don't require any sort of permission. The small ones, the nano ones, don't require any sort of permission whatsoever.
Yes, if you're flying it indoors for recreational and hobby purposes, you don't within about 50 feet,
Right.
which is fairly safe with minimized fatality. You don't need permissions indoors. But if you're trying to fly something like this outdoors for industrial purposes, yes, you will need permissions.
Right.
You will need to be a registered pilot with a fair amount of experience.
Right.
And essentially, you will have to have your paperwork in place before you fly something like
So
this.
I was going through the policy as well, and also to get, well, that UIN, the unique identification number, which I'm guessing all of these will have come January, and also to become a pilot, to do what Rahat was doing outdoors, there are certain criteria that you need to fulfill.
Exactly. So in terms of the flight hours that you have, in terms of the drones that you have, essentially, I belong to the Drone Federation. We run a drone federation. So the purpose of the Drone Federation of India is essentially to be the voice of the of all drone enthusiasts and hobbyists, and even drone company owners across India.
Right.
So ideally, what in the best case scenario, you want all forms of drone activity tracked.
Right.
And the federation will ensure that while talent is completely harnessed and regulations are in place,
Yeah.
one doesn't come at the cost of the other.
So you're essentially tracking the trackers. That's what you're doing.
To an extent, we're also the voice of the industry to make it
course.
as conducive as
Of course.
possible.
Rahat, now since you're holding that fancy gadget, this is what I was asking, well, my team in studio as well, where's the remote control? That essentially, that small little PlayStation-like control on your hand is the remote control.
That's correct. So this is basically what has control of the drone. Different drones have different ground stations.
Yeah.
For this particular one, this is something that we use. And
This particular one, so that everyone can see it.
Yes, this particular one.
This was the naughty juvenile chasing us around office, the delinquent. But it's tiny and it's light. So this is something that you guys come up with. Is this an off-the-shelf solution, or is this something you come up with in your company, in your workhouse as well?
So as solution providers, we're agnostic to the hardware itself. So we sort of get whatever hardware is required based on what the client requires.
Right.
So this particular one that we're holding is an off-the-shelf product. It's a DJI product.
Right.
But we build our own machines as well as and when the
So
use
if
case
I were
is
to go
required.
to market, once the drone policy was fully finalized and everything was in place, how much would it cost me to pick something like this up in the market?
So something like this would cost you about $1.5 lakh.
Purely the hardware.
Yes. The hardware, it comes with a camera as well.
Right.
And
Which is
with
the
this
one at the bottom.
little remote over here.
And why? And so it's connected to your phone. So I'm guessing everything that when we were actually talking to the drone was, that was the eyes.
Right.
And
So
everything was relayed back to that device.
that's right. So they've done a very smart thing to integrate it with the mobile phone, and the advantage of that is it doesn't just work as a screen, but because you've got a touch screen, you can set up all the settings.
Right.
And you want to shoot 4K or HD, you want to shoot, you want to choose your aperture and your ISO. You can do all of those manual settings from the screen right here.
So I want to take that use case, Gaurav, and this is something which sounds very interesting, because the traditional, popular perception is that drones are used at big concerts, like Coldplay, or big weddings, or massive grounds, or cricket or football grounds.
Right.
That's where you use drones. But there's a lot of stuff that you guys are doing, which is perhaps a lot more useful and a more constructive use case for these drones.
Correct. So, I mean, that's the most obvious application where at any event where you have ground cameras and where you're getting a lot of video footage, this is another tool, another eye in the sky to get an aerial perspective. But it also has a lot of benefits when it comes to the enterprise side of the business, which is what we focus on at Quidich. So when we say enterprise, large industries like EPCs, construction, mining, telecom, oil and gas, they have massive uses for drone solutions.
Right.
So while the drone is only a piece of hardware, these industries have massive gaps and massive problems that they need fixed. A lot of these problems come from it being a human-intensive job, which is where the drone comes in. It's completely autonomous, which results in honesty of data. So all the data that you get from the drone is essentially image or video data, which can't be contested. In line with that, we're working extensively in the telecom market right now.
Okay.
And we're doing a lot of telecom inspections to try and fix problems in that industry.
Right.
Other than that, a major application is, of course, in the security and surveillance industry,
Right.
where CCTV cameras are the norm. This is something which is essentially a camera in the sky, which is on-demand surveillance, and it gives you far more information than you can get from being on ground.
So there's two things I want to take from what you just said, and I want to get all of us, and we can come a little closer in a huddle, because I want to understand what these products mean as well. When you're talking about surveillance, I also want to get into the autonomous bit in a while from now. But when you talk about, the products, there's 3 really fancy products you've gotten. Are you telling me that this small one that Rahat was flying and piloting around the office can do everything that you said?
No, not everything.
Okay.
Essentially, one of the limitations, or actually the advantage of something smaller like this,
Yeah.
is that it's VTOL, so it's vertical takeoff and landing.
Right.
But the compromise is that the flight time that you get on drones like this, because they're using 4 propellers, they're flying 4 motors,
Absolutely.
you have limited flight time.
Absolutely.
As opposed to something like this, which is a fixed wing aircraft.
This one?
Yeah, so you might
Can I
need
pick it up?
Yeah, of course.
And this is lighter than the
It
previous
is,
one.
right? It is, and but the battery on this powers only this one motor. So essentially what this does is it gives you much more flight time.
Right.
So essentially for an oil and gas project where you have a 600-kilometer pipeline running along 2 different states, something like this gives you a lot more data and lets you get a lot more information in fewer number of flights.
But it's interesting that you guys are saying that this one is used for more large-scale, perhaps precision tasks. But this one seems lighter. So based on that drone policy, this would come into a lower category?
So given its size, probably not, but given its weight, yes. But though it does feel light, if you take the wings off, the dynamics of this, it's basically to ensure that it maintains a longer haul. But if you actually weigh this, it's probably broader. It's slightly about 250 grams, so it doesn't entirely qualify as a micro drone.
That's very interesting. And you guys have been doing this now, 4 years? So in 4 years, would you say, you guys started off with something which seems futuristic even today at the end of 2017, we're entering 2018. Has the technology evolved leaps and bounds since you guys started?
We have never seen technology innovate at the speed that drones have innovated in. 4.5 years ago when we started, we were literally building machines in our garage where we were putting motors together and experimenting.
Right.
And today, 4 years later, you've got machines left, right and center from all over the world where innovation is happening. And innovation was curbed to a certain extent in India because there was no regulation.
Yeah.
But given what has recently happened with these developments, I think India will also start having great innovations in this space.
So while you're going to explain what these two drones are also about very shortly, I'm going to very carefully, if you could place this back, Gaurav, I want to understand a couple of things. Since you guys brought the regulations, it's really cool that if we would have spoken in October, maybe we wouldn't have spoken about the regulations, but since we're here today, and everyone out there really wants to know how they can set one up, whether they can purchase one, because a lot of our relatives come with them in backpacks from China and whatnot. I've seen them flying all over China. In every market, they're flying these mini drones all over, not with the precision that Rahat was flying them with, but what seems very fascinating to me, Rahat, is that, so, Gaurav earlier mentioned autonomous, but just briefly going through those regulations, it seems like, autonomous drones, per se, whatever the technical term is, are not permitted under that draft policy altogether. Isn't that a concern?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Well,
So,
goes first.
so you have autonomous drones and semi-autonomous
Yes.
drones. So even in simple drones and micro and mini drones,
Yeah.
you can actually set up flight paths and fly them along a certain path.
That's
So
right.
that would make the drone controllable even manually, but you would also have a feature in which you can fly them autonomously.
What's an ideal use case for that?
So if you look at the semi-autonomous feature, when you set a flight path which does require a bit of manual function, that would be used in areas such as mining, wherein you want to cover the entire mine. You want to reduce the load on the people who go out there and in really tough conditions to do ground level surveys, and you want to simplify that by sending out a drone
Yeah.
and having the entire mine map docked onto a person's laptop. So
Yeah.
that is typically a function of a semi-autonomous drone,
Right.
which is some of the ones that we have. In fact, all of the ones that
Right.
we have on display here.
Right.
So you do have autonomous drones which do long hauls, and it is fairly understandable that those are not on the correct side of the law, given at least for civil purposes.
For civil purposes, but because I understand around the world, especially in Canada and countries like that, you can just take out a drone and fly it around anywhere, essentially, if it's of a particular size and at a particular height, as long as it's not interfering with, aviation activity, is what I understand. There are, responsibly enough, there are no drone zones that have been demarcated in that draft policy as well. Of course, if there's a national park, a sanctuary, you can't go there. If there's some, a defense area or an airport, you have to be far away, or even anywhere in Delhi where the VIP areas are, which is understandable. But until now, so I want to understand, so whilst we're shooting, it's going to be a month from now when these will be implemented, right? So once you do implement these guidelines, does it mean that in this 1 month I can fly a drone wherever I want?
That's a tight question. I
Okay.
mean, maybe you just can't, as long as you're responsible and you're indoors and you're flying
So there's nothing
if it's
stopping
in
me,
safe
or is it
hands.
completely illegal?
It's not illegal also.
Okay, it's a grey area. So how, during wedding season, how does everyone fly a drone during wedding season? You have to go to the authorities, get some permission. Is that how it works? Until now. Let's not talk about this month. Until now, how did it work before these regulations come into play?
So until now, it has been a lot in the grey area because there's been a sort of a public notice that was released by the DGCA.
That's right.
And I think till that point, a lot of these operators that were operating in the wedding market were flying without any permissions whatsoever. Whereas, having said that, when we as a company cover the slightly bigger events, so for example, we did the IPL live coverage last year.
Right.
For something like that, we go through and take the entire series of permissions from the DGCA and the local police and so on.
And even for concerts that you guys have
Yes,
covered.
that's correct.
Right.
So we've been restricted so far in our operations, and a lot of our focus so far has been in operations internationally,
Right.
because we were very excited of the space, and because the regulation was restricting us in India, we'd been exploring a lot of opportunities outside.
Right.
But finally, with the regulation being a fairly positive one, we're now very excited because a lot of the projects that we were doing in India suddenly get greenlit. We were also doing a lot of government projects because for the government, the regulation was...
Which from the draft policy, I'm sorry, but since you said government, since in the draft policy, I think, I think they're exempt from the requirements to get a UN or something like that when it comes to government government-run drones, if I can say that. It sounds
Sure.
really futuristic to me
So
to say that.
I think one thing we should just bear in mind that it is still at draft stage,
course.
so we shouldn't consider
course.
it as this is set in stone.
Of course.
But having said that, yes, they have created some amount of relaxations for the government. You will still need a registration for the drone. You will still need a pilot when the weight is higher than the required amount. You will still need a registration, but there are certain amount of exemptions that they
Of course,
have.
and I think, of course, the government can put it to good use for security reasons and surveillance, like Gaurav was talking about earlier. Gaurav, but I want to understand that from you as well, because from our brief conversation, we're talking about use cases.
Right.
You've done some really cool stuff with the railways as well. How can the railways, how can we sort issues with the Western railways using these things?
Oh, well, there's a bunch of stuff. So essentially from amongst what we've done, the railways essentially have two major focus areas.
Okay.
One is building new track to increase the length of track in India to enhance connectivity, and maintenance of existing track. So we've done projects in both verticals for the railways. The most interesting one is what we were doing last month, where we were actually surveying construction for a new track in an area which was otherwise infested by Naxals. So
Wow.
it was fairly dangerous, which is essentially the best use case, where you don't need a human on ground anymore.
Absolutely.
You have an autonomous machine flying and doing the same job for you, in all probability at better precision. So that's what we did for them for one of the recent projects. We're doing something in Bombay as well with the railways here, where the idea is to try and understand spots which are causing human deaths.
Okay.
You'll be amazed at the number of human deaths just the one Western Express line causes. And drones, again, give you an aerial view. They're able to see things that you can't see from an on-ground level without getting into details, but that's essentially the idea, to be able to use a combination of hardware and then software to intelligently gather data,
Right.
to then process that data and analyze and find out why those deaths are occurring and how they can be minimized.
And this is something that Quidich will offer you as an end-to-end solution.
Oh yes, and the good part is that this solution is then, once you have the solution in place, it's easily applicable across multiple industries.
Right.
Because a lot of people face similar issues. Maybe it's not human life, but it's pilferation in some case. It's just better data in for an oil and gas pipeline, for a telecom tower. So that's how we're building. How we've built it is a combination of hardware and software
Right.
to essentially not only tell you what your problems are, but also give you a solution to solve those problems.
Very interesting. And I'm going to ask you guys now, hey, Rad's been holding that for a long time. You can place it back here, and you guys got to help me out with, just take us through a demo of what these drones are all about. And, well, this is the fellow who is all over the office. So the ideal use case for this would be for small events, or
So this is basically for filming. It's got a stabilized camera in front, so if you look at that, no matter which position you go, it stabilizes it.
Okay.
So the main use case for something like this, it's a consumer level drone, which once the regulations open up,
Right.
you'll be able to buy off the shelf and use it mostly for filming purposes.
Okay.
We can do a certain amount of survey work as well, but the quality and resolution is not very great for that.
And no, and also when you talk about this, so you mentioned this would come under the micro category. If it comes under the micro category, does that also mean you have particular altitudes at which you have to operate and you can't cross those, say 100 feet, 200 feet? How
So
does it work?
currently the regulation is at 200 feet.
That's right.
Though through the Drone Federation of India, we have put in a request
It should be higher.
up to about 400 feet.
Because 200 feet would be around a 20-storied building, right? In Mumbai, that would be an issue. You come anywhere in town and every building crosses that.
Precisely.
threshold
I mean, the way we look at it from an industrial application point of
Yeah.
view, 200 feet, the whole point of using the drone is that you speed up processes,
Absolutely.
right? And the lower we come down when it comes to survey work,
Yeah.
the more flight time we have to cover. So the typical sort of sweet spot is between 80 to 120 meters, which is where we're able to do sort of good quality survey.
Right.
At 200 feet, you're suddenly restricting a lot of survey work. So let's see. I mean, it's still at a draft stage, and we're all hoping that we're able to take
So
it
that's
up to 400
drone
feet.
number one. What
Yes.
have you guys called this?
This is called the Phantom.
The Phantom.
It's
I
available
was
off the
waiting
shelf.
for the fancy name. So that's the Phantom out of the way. Let's go in size order. This guy seems like something straight out of a Transformers movie. He seems heavier, so I'm going to leave him. I'm going to leave you to do the demo. It
Okay.
seems like it's a bigger one with a camera. And I saw this one earlier climbing up like a
That's right,
Transformer.
that's right.
So what is this one called and what does it do?
So this one's an Inspire. The biggest advantage of this is that it's got moving legs. So when you lift up, your camera becomes completely independent.
Right.
And we've got two remotes for this. One person controls the movement of the drone,
Okay.
and the other person is able to control the movement of the camera.
That's tag team.
Yeah, so you've got two operators on it. You get much higher level of precision.
In terms of maneuverability?
In
or
terms of your shot precision. So maneuverability, because your pilot's completely concentrating on the position of the drone,
And the
and
other
then somebody
guy's
else is looking at your framing. So when we do something like the IPL, we've got to do, chasing where the ball is and things like that.
Yeah.
You need a lot more precision, which is slightly harder on this one.
Yeah.
On there, we need to make sure there's utmost safety, and at the same time, our director is happy with the shot.
This one would be one level over micro based on these draft
Yes,
guidelines? This
yes.
would be a level above that.
That's right.
How much does it weigh? It's around 5 kilos?
No, this is about 3.6 kilos.
3.6 kilos. And this one, the one that Gaurav was showing me earlier.
Yes.
This is your...
This is a machine
This is really light. I don't understand how you guys have managed to do this. But it really feels like a really cool thermocol level in terms of lightness.
Yeah.
Of course, build quality
So,
is fantastic.
as
but
much as it looks like a toy and it looks like,
Absolutely.
just out of thermocol, it's one of the most powerful machines out of this. It uses a battery that's less than 1/3 the size of either of these.
Right.
And it flies 3 times the flight time, which
that
is,
would be around how long?
so this can fly for 45 minutes at a go.
It would be charged
Yes.
after that. Right?
Yeah. And then you bring it back, change the battery, and it's ready to go again. So this is specifically used for all of our survey work,
Right.
where we're able to go into large mines, send it out for a survey,
Right.
and within an hour you've got almost a square kilometer covered up for survey.
And this would be something which was a lot more expensive as well.
Yes.
In the range of?
This is over 10 lakhs for a piece.
So we
after
should
all.
place it very
Yes.
safely, just in case. I'm just a little worried. No, but also, guys, so these are the use cases. But another thing I wanted to ask you guys, but I'm just going to place it a little ahead, was about what you guys did. You guys are drone enthusiasts, and you all have essentially friends come together and set this company up. How did it work?
So Gaurav and me founded the company about 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
We were roommates at a place called the Young India Fellowship in Delhi.
Of course.
And yeah, I mean, it started off as a complete sort of experiment where we said, let's see what this technology can do. And at that point, we had no idea where it was going to take us. We started it purely as a tool for filmmaking, replacing expensive helicopters.
And that's your background. You're a filmmaker.
I studied film, so that kind of Gaurav's engineering background and my filmmaking background kind of brought us together to build this company. And very quickly we realized that filmmaking is one of the applications, but there are far more interesting problems to be solved through a technology like this. Because
Right.
what it effectively does across all the businesses that we work in, it makes processes much faster. It makes it more efficient, and it's safer because
Yeah.
there's no human intervention. So when you put those three combinations together in a solution, suddenly it becomes really attractive to the end user as well. Whether it's the railways, whether it's telecom, or whether it's actually the police. For the police, for them to do crowd surveillance. Suddenly you've got huge crowds in the Kumbh Mela, or you've got even a convoy of a VIP going through. If you've got a drone flying on top, you've suddenly got eyes on a lot more area than you
It
would
becomes
normally
interesting
have.
when you say that, because every time you come up with a new use case, I can enhance it and think of, well, the next level of the use case. Because I'd imagine if you guys are dealing with authorities and the government and helping them out, figuring out these machines, it would be a task to even raise awareness or even educate them, saying, okay, fine, if I am a police officer who can really benefit from this technology, you guys would have to actually train me in terms of how to, because you have to learn this. This is something you've got to figure out, then eventually get, the license as well. I think the DIPP also looks at commercial licenses. Is that a task?
See, from a regulator's perspective, it's very easy to look at drones with a jaundiced eye.
Absolutely.
So having said that, if you look at the regulations that have come out recently, it is extremely futuristic, and it's a step in the right direction. So making people aware, it's given that the regulations are very pro industry.
Yeah.
It's not all that difficult. I won't say it's impossible. If you look at any technology, there's always resistance to change, irrespective. It's fairly agnostic to what technology it is.
Right.
Whether it's drones, even if you go back to Windows, when people migrated from 95 to ME, that resistance was there, and people kept cribbing about it. So there's always going to be resistance to technology. It's about making people aware and spreading the word. So if you look at that, I think drones are very, very acceptable.
Right.
And I think the positives completely outnumber the
There's one
malpractice.
more thing that stood out for me in that draft policy, which we'll know about next month a little more, and it's something Rahat can comment on, because, Rahat, you come from New Delhi, and the policy talks about low visibility areas and restrictions there. I'd imagine in New Delhi in December, even if you and I were talking, to be a low visibility, radius for whatever it's worth.
Absolutely. The beyond visual line of sight is a criteria which is a big question around the world in regulation. In Delhi, I don't even know how to describe it because it's a complete joke
like
at the
those
moment.
fog lights on your drone as well. But
Yeah, I mean, Delhi at the moment is. I think there is a reason why they thought of it as a no-fly zone.
Absolutely. It would be a task. It would be a task to fly this. You have no visibility, no idea.
Absolutely. I mean, so the beauty with these machines is that they're not just manually driven anymore.
Right.
They come with a lot of technology embedded into the system. So you've
Right.
got GPS guiding them to make sure that they hold their position. So even if you can't see it, it's still holding its position wherever it is. You can press a button and say, oh, I can't see it, I wanted to come back home. That's called a return to home feature.
Yeah.
I just press a button and it'll fly back exactly to where it took off from because it's got very high precision GPS.
Right.
Earlier it was a problem that you might say that, oh, it might bang into a building or something on the way. Now we've got built-in obstacle avoidance features. So if it's coming back home and you can't see it, God forbid, it knows if there's something in between. It can detect obstacles and sort of avoid them and then come back. So the technology, as I was saying, has moved so incredibly fast that today you've got, really smart machines flying up in the air and the safety features have been thought about before they go out onto the shelves.
No, so I found those examples really fascinating. The one Gaurav came up with as well, talking about the railways, this stuff that you could have never thought of. But as of now, if we were to fly this the way we did, it's perfectly fine to fly it in an indoor area like this. Obviously, if you don't have a good pilot, you might knock everything out of the way. They seem like, beasts in small packages. But also, just once more, to understand, from you guys being passionate about drones to now setting up a company that's, coming up with solutions that are being implemented all over the country and over the world as well. You guys are doing global projects as well. What's that been like, in terms of you guys saying, going to investors as well, you guys are funded, going up to investors and saying, hey, this is what we do for a living, this is the future, why don't you invest in our company? Is that a task?
So it was a task so far because every time we went up to investors, the first question that would be thrown back at us is, what about regulation? Yes. And all we could say to them is, listen, the technology is powerful enough to sort of pierce through the problem of regulation, and we will. I mean, it's not going to be a place where you can ban it forever. Yeah. And that was actually our biggest challenge because investors wouldn't. I mean, India and regulation we've known to be slow and not so progressive. But I think that with what has recently happened in this whole space is very exciting for us and for investors because we know for sure that the technology is incredibly strong. So whether it's use cases in agriculture, which is not a place that we do too much work in, but agriculture, you can suddenly do crop predictions. You
Absolutely.
can. I mean, the use cases are endless. I mean, we can talk for hours about the different places, and you will suddenly come up with ideas that hey, why don't we use it in a news broadcast environment? And suddenly
that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So the use cases are endless, and I think for us it has been a challenge so far to talk to investors and to convince not just investors but even our own parents. Because
it's wary of beta kya kar raha hai?
Everybody would be. I mean, the first time you look at it, the first thought is, can you stop playing with this toy? But the potential use cases that it actually comes with is incredible, and that's kind of where we've placed ourselves to be able to make sure that we can bring maximum value to our customers and to everybody around and the whole ecosystem to be able to make sure that it's not just a toy but something that really derives value and purpose.
It's not just a toy,
business.
but today I want to do something different on the show. Since we have some of the country's top drone enthusiasts and the guys obviously running Quidich as well. We can't play Quidich over here, but what we're going to do is let's say a goodbye. Let's just scare the offs a little bit and fly away, right? Can we do a goodbye on that?
Yeah,
let's give it a shot.
Sure.